My name is Michelle Desilets, and I am the Executive Director and founder of Orangutan Land Trust. We are a charity based in the UK, working in Indonesia and Malaysia to enable sustainable solutions for the long-term survival of the orangutan in the wild. The main threats to the orangutan are both habitat destruction and the direct killing and hunting of orangutans, about equal parts by all accounts. Now, when it comes to habitat destruction, this can come from multiple drivers, not just oil palm, but mining, timber, pulp and paper, other agricultural uses. It is true that the conversion of rainforest in places like Indonesia and Malaysia for oil palm has been catastrophic for the orangutan. However, a figure of 25 orangutans per day solely to oil palm development is not accurate. We know that about 3,000 to 5,000 orangutans die unnaturally every year, but that is for all of the causes, which includes direct hunting and killing unrelated to the conversion of habitat. It's frustrating to hear that in Italy there's a lack of expertise on this issue, but international NGOs and groups such as the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, have looked into this issue in some detail and have come up with the real facts as well as indicators for solutions. As for a claim that 850,000 hectares were burnt to make way for oil palm, this figure doesn't bear out. We know that most of the fires happened outside of forested areas. It is almost impossible to determine the culpability, who set these fires. And in fact, if they were deliberate or accidental, we know that given the climatic conditions at the time, the wind, the dry earth and so forth, that accidental fires can be exacerbated. So the 850 cleared intentionally for oil palm does not make sense. I've been working in orangutan conservation for over 25 years, and during that time I've helped to rescue orangutans from oil palm estates and help to nurture them back to health and see them released back to the wild. Those are the lucky ones, of course. We've also witnessed orangutans starving, injured, and killed in these plantations. And it is with that conviction that I looked towards the solutions for these impacts of conventional palm oil and determined that moving towards sustainable palm oil would be imperative if we are to save the orangutan. We know that these orangutans live in areas that are allocated for palm, that most orangutans live outside of protected areas. In Borneo alone, 10,000 orangutans are said to live in areas allocated for industrial palm. So what this tells us and tells the scientists is that we need to protect the orangutan where they're found, and they are found in these fragmented landscapes. So we need to find sustainable practices within these landscapes that accommodate the orangutan. And that is the viewpoint of most orangutan and wildlife conservation organizations working in this area. Orangutan Land Trust, like other organizations and NGOs engaged in the palm oil issue, don't support a blanket boycott of palm oil, one that fails to differentiate between sustainable and conventional or unsustainable palm oil. First of all, to boycott palm oil is rather impractical. It's found in about 50% of packaged goods in your supermarket, from cookies and pizzas and bread and ice cream, but also in personal care products, deodorant, soap, shampoo, cleaning products. And it's nearly impossible to avoid it. Add to that the fact that there are hundreds of derivatives that can come from palm oil and are usually listed by their chemical names. So one would have to memorize all of those hundreds of names and read labels of every product, and still invariably the palm oil will find its way into your shopping trolley. So, and we need to remember that in places like Indonesia, palm oil as a cooking oil is the only affordable oil to most rural poor, poor across the region. So a boycott in these regions is not practical at all. We find it ineffective as well, unless a boycott can really gain momentum, and such boycott hasn't gained any significant momentum. It doesn't trigger change. Putting a chocolate bar back on the shelf because it contains a gram or so of palm oil doesn't send a message to the manufacturer about sustainability or sourcing. It maybe sends a message that they need a new advertising campaign to boost sales. So what's more important is communicating to brands and retailers that you expect sustainable supply, sustainable ingredients such as palm oil in products. Now, it's also a bit inhumane in a way, because we need to recognize that over 16 million people globally depend on the palm oil industry for their livelihoods. And when done properly, palm oil can help rise people out of poverty, give them food security, provide better education for their children, and health care availability. So we need to consider the human aspect of calling for such a boycott. Finally, especially in environmental terms, a boycott, were it to really have traction, would be counterproductive. And that is to say, if we switch to another oil to replace the consumption of palm oil globally, that we would need to use a great deal more land to produce that amount of oil. This is because palm oil has the greatest yield of any edible oilseed crop. If we need to replace palm oil because it's not selling and customers boycotting it in the tropics, other crops will increase the pressure on the remaining rainforest and biodiversity therein. So this is the strongest reason why we're very outspoken about palm-free products and blanket boycotts of palm oil, because the impacts could be devastating when we look at the alternatives that would come in to replace them. As I've already mentioned, the expansion of conventional palm oil historically has been catastrophic for forests and the biodiversity that live within them, including the orangutan, which has become somewhat of a poster child of all that's wrong with palm oil. The fact is, sustainable palm oil provides solutions for the survival of orangutans and other wildlife. This is because under the RSPO, deforestation, for example, is prohibited. Orangutans need forests. Biodiversity abounds in forests. So protecting forests, not clearing forests, for the development of oil palm is critical to saving these species. Additionally, there are criteria within the RSPO standard that ensure that companies do not harm or capture or kill rare, threatened, or endangered species like the orangutan. And there's many other indicators and criteria that are designed to protect biodiversity and rainforest. So it is for this reason that conservationists support sustainable palm oil and ask that all along the supply chain join in demanding that all palm oil is produced in a sustainable manner. And that also includes governments, the governments of the producing countries, to have regulations in place that make it, in fact, mandatory that palm oil is deforestation free and friendly to biodiversity, and not just a voluntary standard. But also in consuming countries to have regulations about the palm oil that's coming into countries. We look to leading countries as signatories of the Amsterdam Declaration Partnership, which is working towards zero deforestation in 2020 from supplies, from commodities. So, and then it also goes down to the consumer. Again, a blanket boycott doesn't really change what's happening on the ground, but communicating to brands and retailers and indeed your decision makers in your country that you expect that the products you buy and consume are not contributing to deforestation and biodiversity loss. This will go a long way to changing what's happening on the ground and really protect orangutans.